At the hospital, the head nurse whispered. "Don't come back. Your husband." She stopped herself. Her eyes softened, and she squeezed my hand like she was holding something fragile. Something already broken. I nodded, even though I did not understand. I thanked her, even though my heart was already sinking. And then I walked out into the parking lot alone. The sky was gray that day. Not stormy. Just heavy. The kind of sky that presses down on your chest and makes breathing feel like work. I sat in my car with the engine off. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. After 43 years of marriage, I was suddenly being told, without words, that my place beside my husband was over. Not because I did something wrong. Not because I stopped loving him. But because the world had quietly decided I no longer belonged. I thought of all the times I had waited in hospital halls before. The hard chairs. The smell of clean floors and old coffee. The way I used to pray silently while holding his coat. And now someone was telling me not to come back. When I finally drove home, the house felt different. Same walls. Same furniture. But the silence had weight. I took off my shoes slowly. I placed my purse on the table the way I always did. And then I stood there, not knowing what to do next. That was the moment I realized something painful. This story was not just about illness. It was not just about a hospital. It was about how easily a life can change. How quietly people can be pushed aside. And how sometimes, the deepest heartbreak comes not from anger, but from being gently told to disappear. Set up. My name is Margaret Collins. Most people call me Maggie. I am 71 years old, and until recently, I believed my life was simple. Not perfect. Just steady. I was married to Robert Collins for 43 years. Everyone called him Bob. He was not a loud man. He did not like attention. But he had a way of filling a room just by being there. We met when I was 26 and working at a small public library in Ohio. He came in one afternoon asking for a book on home repairs. He held the list upside down. I remember smiling and saying, "I think the book might read better this way." He laughed. That laugh stayed with me my whole life. Bob worked as an electrician. Long hours. Rough hands. Always tired when he came home, but never too tired to ask how my day was. We raised 2 children. Our son Daniel and our daughter Laura. Daniel lives in Arizona now. He has a busy life. A good job. A family of his own. We talk, but not often. Laura lives closer. Only 30 minutes away. She is married to Kevin. They have one son, Ethan, who is 10 years old. Laura and I used to be close. Very close. When Bob and I bought this house 30 years ago, Laura was still in high school. She painted her bedroom walls light blue and taped magazine photos everywhere. She dreamed big back then. Life, as it often does, slowly changed her. Bob retired 5 years ago. At first, he struggled with it. He missed feeling needed. He missed routine. But then we settled into something gentle. Morning coffee together. Small walks around the block. Quiet dinners. I thought we were in the calm part of life. The part you earn after years of effort. Then Bob started forgetting things. At first, it was small. Misplaced keys. Missed appointments. Calling Ethan by Daniel's name. We laughed it off. Just getting old, Bob said. But deep down, I felt something tighten inside me. The doctor's visit started quietly. Blood tests. Memory tests. Long pauses while Bob searched for words. Then came the diagnosis. Not spoken all at once. Not delivered like a sudden blow. But stretched out across months. Early cognitive decline. Progressive. Unpredictable. I became more than a wife after that. I became a reminder. A guide. Sometimes, a shield. I helped him dress when buttons confused him. I repeated stories without correcting him. I stayed awake at night listening to his breathing. Laura began visiting more often. At first, I was grateful. She brought groceries. She organized pills. She spoke to doctors with confidence. Kevin came too, sometimes. Quiet. Observing. Slowly, things shifted. Laura started speaking for Bob instead of to him. She corrected me in front of nurses. She asked questions without looking at me. I told myself it was stress. Fear. Love, in its own strange form. Then one afternoon, Laura said, very gently. Mom, maybe you should rest more. Let me handle some of this. I smiled. I said, of course. But that night, I cried in the bathroom so Bob wouldn't hear me. When Bob's condition worsened, the hospital stays became longer. The halls became familiar. The nurses knew my name. Until one day. They didn't look at me the same way anymore. That was the day the head nurse whispered to me. That was the day everything began to fall apart. Rising conflict. The changes did not come all at once. They never do. They came quietly, like dust settling on furniture you stop noticing. Small things at first. Things I told myself did not matter. Laura began calling the hospital before I did. Sometimes I would arrive in the morning and hear a nurse say, "Your daughter already filled us in." I would smile and nod. Inside, something felt misplaced. Bob started having trouble sleeping. He would wake up confused, calling my name like a child lost in a store. I held his hand and whispered, "I'm here. It's okay." But during the day, Laura would say, "He sleeps better when I'm around." She said it kindly. Almost gently. Still, the words stayed with me. One afternoon, I overheard Laura speaking to a social worker in the hallway. She did not know I was standing behind the corner. "Mom means well," she said softly. "But she's exhausted. She doesn't see how bad things have gotten." I wanted to step forward. I wanted to say, "I see everything." But my feet would not move. At home, Bob began wandering at night. I locked the doors. I left lights on. I slept lightly, always listening. Laura suggested alarms. Then cameras. Then professional caregivers. Each suggestion came wrapped in concern. And each one moved me a little further away. Kevin started handling paperwork. Insurance forms. Medical authorizations. One evening, Laura sat across from me at the kitchen table. The same table where she once did homework while I cooked dinner. "Mom," she said, "we should talk about legal things." Her voice was calm. Prepared. She slid papers toward me. Power of attorney. Care directives. I read the words slowly. They blurred. "You'll still be involved," she said quickly. "This just makes things easier." I signed. I told myself it was practical. I told myself it was love. After that, decisions were made faster. Sometimes without me. Bob was moved to a different hospital wing. I found out when I arrived and my badge no longer worked. "I'm his wife," I said quietly at the desk. The clerk hesitated. Then checked the computer. "Your daughter is listed as primary contact." The words landed softly. But they cut deep. I called Laura that night. You didn't tell me, I said. She sighed. I didn't want to worry you. I stared at the wall as she spoke. At our wedding photo. Bob smiling. Young. Strong. The house grew quieter. Not peaceful. Just empty. Daniel called once during that time. He sounded rushed. Laura's got things covered, right? He said. She's closer. Yes, I said. She is. At the hospital, Bob sometimes looked past me. Not always. But often enough to hurt. Once, he asked. Are you the nurse? I smiled and said. No, honey. It's me. He nodded politely. Laura noticed these moments. She began staying longer. Sometimes she would suggest I go home and rest. You look tired, she said. You've done so much. Those words should have felt kind. Instead, they felt like a door slowly closing. Then came the meeting. A doctor. A social worker. Laura and Kevin. I sat quietly, hands folded. They talked about long-term care. About safety. About quality of life. The doctor looked at Laura when he spoke. Not at me. Finally, I asked. What does Bob want? There was a pause. He can't really say any more, Laura replied. I nodded. I swallowed hard. That night, I lay awake remembering all the things Bob used to say. How he never wanted to be a burden. How he trusted me. I wondered when that trust had been transferred. And how it happened without anyone asking me. The final shift came slowly, but clearly. One morning, a nurse asked me to wait outside while Laura was with Bob. Just for a moment, she said. That moment stretched into an hour. When Laura came out, she hugged me. Too tightly. Mom, she said, maybe it's better if visits are shorter. He gets confused. I smiled again. I always smiled. But that night, alone in the kitchen, I realized something painful. I was still Bob's wife. But I was no longer being treated like I belonged beside him. And something worse was coming. I could feel it. Turning point. The morning everything changed felt ordinary. I woke before sunrise, the way I always did. I made coffee and stood by the kitchen window, watching the streetlights fade. For a moment, I forgot where I was going. Then I remembered. The hospital. I chose Bob's favorite sweater from the closet. The soft gray one. Even though he rarely noticed clothes anymore, I still brought them. It made me feel useful. At the hospital, the elevator smelled of disinfectant and old air. I had memorized the floor numbers by heart. When I reached Bob's room, the door was closed. That was unusual. I waited. I listened to muffled voices inside. Laura's voice. A man's voice I did not recognize. I knocked gently. A nurse opened the door and stepped out, closing it behind her. She looked at me with a practiced expression. Mrs. Collins, she said softly, could you wait in the family room for a moment? I nodded. I always nodded. The family room was empty. Just a couch, a small table, and a framed photo of a lake meant to feel calming. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Finally, Laura came in. She sat across from me instead of beside me. That was the first sign. Mom, she said, we had to make a decision this morning. Her hands were folded. Prepared. The doctor feels that it's best if Bob transitions to full-time care. I stared at her. I am his full-time care, I said quietly. She shook her head slowly. That's not what I mean. She explained things carefully. About safety. About structure. About supervision. She did not mention love. And visitation? I asked. Laura hesitated. For now, she said, the care team thinks limited visits are better. Less confusion. My chest tightened. I'm his wife, I said again. The word sounded small. She reached for my hand. I pulled mine back without thinking. Then the doctor entered. He greeted Laura first. He spoke about policy. About cognitive stress. About best practices. I listened, but the room felt far away. Finally, I asked him. Are you telling me not to come anymore? The doctor glanced at Laura. Then back at me. I think, he said carefully, some space may help everyone adjust. Everyone. After that, things moved quickly. Bob was transferred that afternoon. To a facility 30 miles away. I was not in the car. I was not asked to come. When I tried to visit the next day, my name was not on the approved list. That was when the head nurse found me sitting in the lobby, holding Bob's sweater like it might explain something. She knelt beside me. She lowered her voice. Don't come back, she whispered. Your husband, he's settled. It's better this way. I did not argue. I did not ask questions. I just nodded. Again. That night, Laura called. I know this is hard, she said. We're doing what's best. For who? I asked. There was silence. After that, the calls became shorter. Then less frequent. I tried to talk to Daniel. He sounded uncomfortable. Maybe let Laura handle things, he said. She's closer. I stopped calling. Days passed. The house felt hollow. Bob's chair remained empty. His slippers sat by the door. I would catch myself setting 2 plates at dinner. Then quietly put one away. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the care facility. Addressed to Laura. I opened it by mistake. It mentioned progress notes. Visitation schedules. My name was not there. That was when I finally cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, tears falling onto the wood. I realized something then. I had not been pushed out with anger or cruelty. I had been eased out gently. With smiles. With concern. With the language of care. And that made it hurt more. Because there was no one to blame. No one to confront. Just the quiet understanding that my role in my husband's life had been rewritten. Without me. Resolution. After the hospital, time stopped feeling normal. Days passed, but they did not move forward. They circled. I woke up. I made the bed. I washed dishes that were already clean. Sometimes I would stand in the hallway and forget why I was there. The phone stayed quiet. Laura sent updates through short messages. Dad had a calm day. He ate well. He didn't seem agitated. Each message felt like a report about a stranger. I was not asked how I was. One morning, I found myself driving without thinking. By the time I noticed, I was halfway to the care facility. I pulled over and sat there, gripping the wheel. I did not go the rest of the way. Instead, I turned back and cried the entire drive home. A week later, my neighbor Helen knocked on my door. She was widowed. Quiet. Always kind. I made soup, she said. You don't have to eat it. Just thought I'd bring it. I let her in. We sat at the kitchen table without speaking for a long time. Finally, she said. You look like someone who lost something but wasn't allowed to say goodbye. That broke something open inside me. I told her everything. Slowly. Carefully. She listened without interrupting. You didn't fail him, she said when I finished. You were replaced. The word felt heavy. But honest. After that, I started writing. Not letters. Not complaints. Just memories. I wrote about the day Bob taught Daniel how to ride a bike. About the time Bob stayed up all night when Laura had the flu. About the way he used to squeeze my hand when words failed him. The writing did not fix anything. But it steadied me. One afternoon, I received a call from the facility. Bob had been agitated. They could not calm him. Laura was out of town. Kevin was unreachable. For a moment, the nurse hesitated. Then she said, "Mrs. Collins, would you be willing to come?" I said yes before she finished the sentence. When I entered Bob's room, he was restless. His eyes searched the space. I sat beside him and took his hand. "It's me," I whispered. He looked at me for a long time. Then he smiled. "Maggie," he said. Just my name. Nothing else mattered. I stayed for hours. I sang softly. I told him stories he already knew. When he fell asleep, his breathing slowed. The nurse watched quietly from the doorway. After that day, I was allowed to visit again. Quietly. Without announcements. Laura called later that evening. "I didn't realize," she said. Her voice was tired. "He knows you." "I always did," I replied gently. There was another pause. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not fully. But enough." We did not fix everything. But something shifted. I no longer felt erased. I was still his wife. Still part of his life. Not because of papers. Not because of permission. But because love remembers. Even when memory fades. Ending. Bob passed away on a quiet Sunday morning. There was no rush. No alarms. Just stillness. I was sitting beside him, holding his hand the way I had done thousands of times before. His breathing slowed, then softened, like a wave easing back into the sea. I did not cry right away. I just sat there, listening to the silence that followed. Laura arrived later that morning. Her eyes were red. She hugged me without words. This time, I did not feel pushed aside. The days after were gentle. Slow. We sorted through Bob's things together. Old shirts. Worn tools. Photographs with faded edges. Laura apologized again, this time without explanation. "I thought I was protecting him," she said. "I forgot you were part of that." I nodded. "I thought staying quiet would keep the peace," I replied. I forgot that love sometimes needs a voice. We learned something together in those days. Something neither of us planned to learn this way. Grief does not always arrive as loud pain. Sometimes it arrives as being slowly moved out of your own life. But love. Love leaves marks. It shows up in familiar hands. In remembered names. In the calm that comes when someone you trust is near. Now, the house is quiet again. But it is not empty. I drink my coffee by the window each morning. I talk to Bob sometimes. Out loud. Not because I expect answers. But because it feels right. If there is one thing I know now, it is this. Never assume love becomes unnecessary just because someone grows weak. Never confuse control with care. And never forget that the people who have walked the longest beside us still belong there at the end.